Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Vikram. I'm going to talk to you guys about a lot of things, actually. Well, primarily, I want to thank John and Jeff. John just left and Jeff was outside for having me here. It's actually great. Conferences make me excited because there's a lot of enthusiasm especially towards tracks that are radical. And the way I understand this Wrecking Ball track, here we have. And so the Wrecking Ball track is meant to generate a lot of enthusiasm into the radical side of computer security. That's one of the things I'm going to talk about. I'm a former kernel hacker. I maintain the C governor states for suspended resume on Dell XPS laptops. I left because they removed my chunk of code, so they had no need for me. I was a volunteer anyway. Generally, people who do this kind of stuff are hired by Intel, who knows what. I got interested in security, had a job, worked as a network security architect. Did a lot of stuff, the usual stuff, but that stuff is not too much the main focus of the talk today. What can you and what can you not expect from the talk? This talk will not be on how to use the software. It won't be on how to hack and how to break into places. This talk, I'm going to keep a lot of things generalized. I probably wouldn't move as much either as our honorable keynote speaker did, maybe a little bit, but I'll try to keep up his energy and pace. Today I want to talk a lot about crossroads. I stand at a very interesting position where my training is an undergraduate. I'm an undergraduate student right now. I study computational biology. And before, as I mentioned, my job and so on, they put me in an interesting position where I can talk about both of them, at least with some confidence. My main focus today will be to inspire people here, the young folks who are either in the industry or hoping to get in, to take what's a very old field. Biology's well established for who knows how long. And if you can get inspired by some things that happen in biology, and how do they apply to really the core of computer security. To me, computer security is an art because there are people who clearly do it better than others, and there are those who don't. But they learn, like Sony. But anyway, so the focus of my talk and the way the talk is organized, you can see, I start with a general overview of security systems. This thing that everyone in this room knows. Then I start to talk about the things that you guys may not know as well, which is life systems. Stuxnet, one of my personal favorites, and by far one of the most important models that I think personally that corresponds to life systems in computer wires. Stephen Hawkins is known to say that it's interesting that our first creation, which is, he thinks wires are our own creations, and I agree with him to some extent, are an incredibly destructive force that only cause damage. If they're created in our image, supposedly how we are created in God's image, only thing we do is destroy, which is kind of an interesting thing. After that, I'm going to talk about what are some of the factors that you can inspire from where I stand, and what can you guys take out of this talk. And lastly, network resilience and evolution, which is obviously a very common thing for any security network, right? You want the network to be resilient. You want it to be powerful enough to respond to adapting threats. Adaptation is actually an interesting thing. And at the end, I hope maybe when I have 10, 15 minutes or something, we can have a chat. I like chats, and so they're good. So let's move on. Okay. Oh, use the mic?
Yeah, you can.
I think I'll go without the mic. Y'all can hear me in the back, right? Okay, good. So what are defensible strategies? Defensible systems, it's a common, a big word and term used in business management, where they say that you lower your risks, right? Obviously, everyone wants to lower the risk and maximize the good stuff that you do. Defensible systems are systems you can secure using your tools if they're orchestrated in a methodology that allows you to do what's called minimum repair threshold. Repair threshold is something, I'm defining a lot of new terms. Some of them you're familiar with, some you're not. I hope we stay on the same page after I define them. Repair threshold is something, if I find a vulnerability that's reported, I can patch it really quick. If I can patch it fairly quick, that system, that whatever component of my network remains and stays in my repair threshold. This term I might use a lot afterwards, but generally, of course, we want to lower the risk that we attain. Every security architect wants to do that. So how do we do some of these things? And the flowchart I created, everyone's very familiar with it. You protect by making a defensible network. The defensible network has all sorts of things. Our keynote speaker mentioned some of the tools we use, IDS and so on. And then that's part of our defensible architecture. Pervasive network awareness. This is, do you know what the hell is going on in your network? And you should. If you don't, then well, that raises other issues. Then after that is by far, I think, one of the most important parts of this, and the part that most people fail at, is network security monitoring. This is why I got a job. The people should keep failing at this, so I have people like me keep getting jobs. If people stop failing at those, that's bad, because less jobs and stuff. Response. So what happens when a breach does happen? You have a certain set of protocols, you comply to those protocols. It's nice because you have something to fall back onto, and using that, you can go on and do contain the breach faster, analyze what happened, fix it, report, and you're back on track to to doing the good stuff again. That is all the network incident response. And the last part, well, actually, which should be the first part, I think, is the planning. Right? No one plans, I think, to do a lot of these things. No one plans to get hacked. Everyone, a lot of people in their mindset think that they're secure. Soon I'll mention some books by Richard Belzic, and he talks about how when he started going into the Navy, he was working in the Navy intelligence, they thought they were the most secure people. Turns out they were so foobarred that it was not even funny. They realized soon afterwards that they were overconfident in what they do. And I think a lot of the industry today actually has that same mindset. I think we should get out of that, and I'll talk a little bit more about these upcoming. So okay, here is again just a review of securing systems and security systems. Very, very mundane and common. I'm sure in most of your jobs that you take on. Data access you want to prevent, or remote logins where you have remote access, you want to make sure those are monitored very well. So that the RDP vulnerability that came out not too long ago in Windows was a huge issue there. Then local monitoring, obviously you want to monitor your local data. You have some policies and procedures. These are, I think, one of the most important things. If you design them well, you can fall back onto them and do a good job at it. Network security itself, again, the biggest part of this diagram. Port limitation, web security, detection, and active firewalls. Again, very standard common systems. I just want to have everyone get a feel of, this is your comfort zone. And when I take you out of the comfort zone, I hope the transition goes smoother. That's why I'm presenting some of these things here. Okay, this is one of our favorite DDoS protection systems, which 99% of the times don't work. Really, I've worked, when I worked and we realized, companies sell them. Half the time they're total crap and they don't work. People buy them because they have these pretty diagrams that go with them. I stole one of these right here. So what did these do? My job had a lot of common things, and a lot of this talk I'll try to focus on and try to relate to what a common network security person would do. You find hacks, you fix them, and that kind of a thing. I'm not talking about too radical things. Those come later on in the biology section. You'll see. So what do we have here? A very common thing that's happening. You have botnets or bad people, hackers, and you have legitimate clients all accessing the same internet, right? That goes in and out of your private infrastructure. You go in and you go out. You try to filter that. The blue thing back there is that protecting wall. You cross it. If you're good, you're allowed to cross. If you're bad, you're not allowed to cross. This never works. Layer filtering. This is the second approach, and actually, this is one of the things I'm going to talk a lot about later on. This is where this is not the same as what I presented before, because I think there are sort of two DDoS protection techniques. Layer filtering actually is a little slower. Well, they're real time, but they're a little slower comparatively to some of the approaches where they would filter at levels, and these levels are sort of thresholds. So threshold 1 will rule out 75% of the bad traffic. Threshold 2 is the other sneaky attacks that rule out maybe 5 or 10% more, and these kind of reduce the damage. It's like your car has the airbags, right? You get into God forbid anyone gets into a car accident, your airbags inflate and they protect you. Hopefully, this is happening the same thing in layers. Again, I'm talking about a very, very generic DDoS protection system here. This is not specific to a company or any products. I do want to make a note. I'm not endorsing anyone. If I talk about software, ignore me. That's why I'm not going to try to mention software names. I don't want my talk to be seen as talking about someone. I will advertise books because I love books and people love books and books love books. So there are two books here that influenced me a lot, both written by the same guy. Amazing, amazing books. I highly recommend any aspiring network security people to read them. The first is here, Extrusion Detection, and the other one is Network Security Monitoring. In both of these, Richard talks about a very innovative approach, something that should have been obvious to us, but apparently wasn't. He got a book and profits out of it, so that's good for him. Extrusion detection, what does that mean? Extrusion is a very common word. I have a fancy thing up there. I use PowerPoints as a guideline, and I'll hopefully talk to you guys looking at you. Extrusion means your system's in breach. You try to contain what's happening from then on to go outside. You don't want a compromised system home back to the CNC, request more stuff, and keep requesting more stuff and more stuff, and then you're foobarred. You want to control that. That I think is actually a very, very impressive strategy and way to go about doing things, because sure, everyone has an intrusion detection system where you don't want bad people coming in. But what if systems compromise? This goes back to the definition of defensible system. Can you control and contain what happened? If you control and contain your breach, you're already doing better than 80–90% of people. There's a report that came up by Symantec. I know some of you guys probably don't like Symantec, but Symantec does a good job at writing reports. I'll give them that much. So the report that came out mentioned a lot of the stuff that they were particularly talking about containing and correcting the breach. And they mentioned if you can just do these two things right, if you can implement a good extrusion detection system, and Richard talks in great amount of detail in his book how to do it right. They use OpenBSD or FreeBSD based servers. I forget one of those. It's been a while since I've read them, but both of them are very fluid approaches, and I think there's a lot of really good meat on the bone to take out of these books. Extrusion detection is something I'll actually come back to real quick later on in my talk. In DDoS that I mentioned not too long ago, noobs who are like lead hackers, they claim to use these tools like Slow Loris, I think, is one of the popular tools that newbies get their hands on and then get arrested for it. It's an incredibly stupid tool because you don't know what the limits are. A tool is only as good as its toolmaker. You can do a lot and you can do nothing. A lot of those 14, 15-year-olds unfortunately accomplish nothing. DDoS protection, your main goal is actually very difficult. In computer science and computation complexity, it's an NP-hard problem. Basically meaning that it can't be solved in real time. The problem is that of can you, given a target A and B, can you distinguish if A is good or B is good? And so based on that, there's a lot of criteria that you use. And these software, basically you write code based on a criteria. Your criteria determines what's good and bad. And these criteria are generally determined by a lot of really smart people who come and talk about these criteria. But sometimes these things don't go as planned, particularly with DDoS protection systems, because they're getting better and better. I'll talk later on about another term, adaptive pressure. Adaptive pressure is a common known term in evolutionary biology where one thing pushes you to get better. It's like you having a coach, a mentor, a coach who pushes you to do better and better. Viruses, the virus makers, antiviruses have that kind of a relation, where adaptive pressure pushes a virus to get better and better and better, and the virus acts back on the antivirus to get better and better and better. These don't work in this particular dynamic, but roughly they both catch up at a given time. So we all know the common DDoS flood types, the TCP flushes, UDP, and so on. Over there, the interesting graph actually, and this is what I mentioned. I'll come back to extrusion detection. You see on the graph, there's height, and this is what I'll come back to. As the height increases in this graph, the sensitivity of the data increases. Obviously, no one wants to access the very readily available data. You're not going to hack a website to retrieve its HTML. You can just do it through using your Google browser. You want to get more reports on their assets. Finance is actually playing a big role in this. Sometimes attacks happen because they want to sabotage right before the quarter reports come out, because quarter reports influence how stock market works. And some of these hacks, they may or may not have a direct financial motive, but they end up becoming that. I know this happened because a company that I invested in got hacked. Their stocks went down right before quarter four. Quarter four sales were great. I lost 20 bucks in that. I don't care. I pulled my money out of them because they're not defensible. I'm not going to invest. That's how clients see it too. If the company's not good, they're not going to trust them. They're not going to invest in them, so on and so forth. So again, look at as the colors get intensified. It's like same way data gets more secure. The more intense and the more secure the data is, the more you have to do to protect it. It's kind of obvious. And extrusion detection plays a role. You can see there's two ways to get to the top. Either you go from the very bottom or you go from the green up. You can either make your system so you can focus all your efforts that you have so much intrusion detection that no one gets in, which is obviously a false hope. Someone will get it. Or you can do a decent job at it and also do a very good job at extrusion detection, where you can control and contain your breach. And now you're getting somewhere, because now you not only have protection for someone getting in, you also have protection for someone homing back home or controlling command servers to protect them from doing bad stuff. that stuff I mentioned as in anything bad. One of the, in the pictures before you saw, this is one of my favorite ones, by the way. They mentioned botnets and stuff. This is one of the earliest propagations. I was actually in India. My dad used to work in IT. He got a call saying that their banks, especially in the local area, got hit by conflict. He needs to come in. Saturday morning, he had to come into work. And that was my beginning of security career. I'm like, what is this thing? Let me look it up. There were no reports online. Back then, internet use it wasn't as common as it is now. So you actually had to, we had those modems. You had to plug your telephone wire back in that's back in the day. This is 1999. I was young back then. I didn't understand half the stuff I read, but I found this picture. This is actually from that old paper. I was like, this is so cool, but I don't get what the hell's going on here. Generally, those things inspire you to do better things. So now, so far, I've talked about what security systems are and what they're designed. It's roughly a very generalized approach. And now I'm going to take you out of your comfort zone to something that I like. It's easier on me, right? So these are life systems. And what is a life system? A life system is something that has 3 criteria. These are heavily debated. I think these criteria fit the purpose of this talk. The first criteria is it should have a sensor. What's a sensor? Something that senses. Voila. What's an integrator? Something that takes the output of a sensor and stores it, temporarily generally. And what's an effector? An effector will take the output of the integrator and do something about it. A very simple system is you take Lysol, you put it on your bathroom or whatever, use it, you kill bacteria with it, right? The bacteria died because of a stimulus they couldn't handle. The stimulus was processed, internalized, taken care of, and it activated stuff that shouldn't have been activated in normal things, and well, it killed them. That's a very common. At the bottom, you see beautiful pictures. You can't see too well in here, but these are life systems that actually light up if you do the right things at the right time. Basically, I'll come to a point later on that viruses. I argue that throughout my talk, and I will more, the viruses are very, I'm talking about computer viruses, by the way, not real life viruses, which I'll get to in a bit too. That's when it gets confusing. Viruses are a very, very powerful tool to study life systems. Viruses are nothing more than computer programs we've written. But if you look at them in a bigger picture, you start to see things that work in a way that you never expected them to be. This is code. Downloading other code, making sure its other parts that are spread are well infected, or if they're out of date, they go and get updated. This topic is very hot topic in biology. Some examples of you see here. This is called bioluminescence. Bioluminescence, and basically these lights are happening when one cell responds to the next cell, which tells the next cell to light up, which tells the next cell to light up. These are completely random, by the way. The patterns that form. Some of them. When I worked in the lab that did some of this stuff, absolutely breathtaking patterns that come out. One of them actually looked like Christmas tree around the Christmas stamps. We're like, oh, that's wonderful. I am a huge fan of emergence. I think my formal study as an undergraduate started with emergence theory. I focused on emergence because emergence was interesting. The question that drives me, every morning you wake up, you think about, okay, why am I waking up and going to work today? Why am I waking up going to lab today? To me, the question is, why is simplicity around? Why are very complex things boiling down to simple facts in nature and in life? And that's a question, it's a very difficult question, obviously. I may not never find an answer. I hope I don't, because it becomes boring afterwards, if you have answers. Stephen Wolfram, if you've used Mathematica before, talked about wrote a book, A New Kind of Science, influential book, and maybe this thing. Actually, it's got 1,500 some pages. Ridiculous. He said it took him 10 years to write it. Up there you'll see these patterns started from nothing but random movements of dots. These dots, this is after 10 minutes, by the way. Completely random movements. The only things, there are 4 principles generally. I'm only going to talk about 1 or 2 that they rely to. If you're next to a guy, you push the guy up. If you're behind the guy, you push him back. And if you're up and down, you do something crazy. But really, these patterns are coming out after 10 minutes. Again, realize computers can do these things much, much faster than we can imagine, right? You do it on paper, it's going to take forever. This takes 10 minutes. And these are impressive, interesting colonies that are happening. So how does this relate to life systems? Bear with me, I will get into talking about security systems in a very quick moment. And you'll see, what I want you guys to focus on throughout my talk is how are these things, just in the back of here, how are these things related to what you guys work on a daily basis? Emergence means that more complexity arises from well-defined simple components. These simple components can be programs, program modules. Stuxnet has about 15 modules that just do program management, detecting on the Siemens systems. I'll talk about Stuxnet later on in a bit. That's a very exciting topic. But here, I want to talk about two things. One, obviously, that book, get it, it's good. Just like the last books, really good book. It talks about, in there they talk about how the lives of software, cities, and ants are related. It sounds like a crazy topic, just like the crazy topic I'm presenting. But that book inspired me to do a lot. And I think everyone, at least at some level, should understand emergence, because you can build better algorithms, you can build better tools to do things, but at a level you realize, I don't need to do better tools. If I can use the tools, this is a Unix, very core Unix philosophy. You use one tool to do one thing. Mud is an email reader, that's it. Procmail is an email filterer, that's it. I have Task Order, which is the task manager, that's it. You don't make Mud do 20 things and it sucks at all 20 of them. You make it do one thing and it's good at that. When you start stacking them up, you sort of break the rules of, the rules of statistics where added complexity should saturate, but they don't. That's what Steve Johnson is going to talk about in his book, and we see this happening up in life systems. If you let this simulation run forever, we don't know what's going to happen, but something will come out of it. Maybe something very intricate and complicated is going to come out of it. And the thing is, if you let simple tools stack up, they will make something complicated. And that is very, very, very powerful. If you really, truly understand what those simple tools are, my God, the thing you're going to get out of it is going to be truly incredible and very powerful, because it's customizable. How many people, just by a show of hands, have used Mutt here? I hope everyone. Oh wow, that's a few people. Not my expectation, but yeah. So Mutt is a very old email client. If you contribute to group lists, mailing lists, and whatever, they prefer you use Mutt because Gmail does top posting. They don't like that. The bottom picture here actually is one of the things I want to talk about. Very, very brief detail. Mitochondria. It's a part of the cell. Mitochondria is generally the powerhouse. Back when life didn't exist, mitochondria existed by itself. It got swallowed up by a cell. Afterwards, somewhere down the line, something ate it. When they ate it, it turns out in its tummy, it didn't get digested, but it stayed there. It stayed there because these two could form a symbiotic, a mutually beneficial relationship to each other, and they stayed. That's what mitochondria looks like, by the way. It's a circle. Well, that's the inside. This is what it looks like. And then, the idea I'm trying to show here is, again, a very simple thing that just generates energy now got absorbed by something that only existed as a layer. Before mitochondria and stuff were around, the cells only existed as inanimate layers. These were chemicals, lipids. Once you have a powerhouse, okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now we add machinery to replicate, and now we have bases of very rudimentary bases of life. You have a powerhouse, and you have replication. Now we're getting somewhere with this. Okay, and this is a picture. I actually made this. I'm really proud of it. It came out good. Part of it was made in Mathematica. So what is going on? The top part, it's kind of fuzzy, but the top part is I analyzed the attacks that happen per year. Again, semantic reports list this kind of stuff there. You can just gut it off there. The number of attacks that happen, the frequency of them, where they're very clustered, that's DDoS attacks. The other ones are all other attempts. Some of these are just failed attempts to log in. The point I'm trying to show here is that even though these attacks look like nothing in the top shelf, they just mean if you have this kind of stuff, you're doing bad as a company. You shouldn't have this many attacks happen. That's not, obviously that's not good. The point I'm trying to make is in the lower part, you see that you can actually stack these up in a 3D structure. And look at that, something interesting is coming out of it. Can you make sense of your attacks in a 3D point of view where you saw nothing before, but you start to see some structures? Maybe the top structures in here can be avoided if you do one strategy. You can tackle more than one thing, so you can identify problems. Again, the idea is emergence. We take simple attacks that we recorded, you pile them up in a logical fashion, and you get something out of it. And we hope that something you get out of it is interesting enough to help you not be attacked by the same things again. Oftentimes this happens, by the way. You get attacked and you get attacked by the same thing. You realize you just forgot to fix one thing. That happened to me when I was working. I got called by my boss, and that was not good. But anyway, it was good. It came out good. I left afterwards soon. So anyway. I just showed you a picture of the attacks that happen. How does that relate to life systems? In life systems, bacteria like to do this thing where they have a lot of friends. They like to be around their buddies. I like to be around my buddies. Here you guys want to be around each other. At least those of you are friends and stuff. So you want to be around your buddies, and these bacteria form. You can see this picture here. they all go attach. They attach on a surface they find where food is present. They attach and they form these things called biofilms. The picture looks slightly complicated, but basically biofilms are these, it's like your group of friends, right? Someone attacks you, you have 10 buddies. I mean, come on, no one's gonna bother attacking you. The 9 of them are gonna beat the crap out of the people who attack you, right? That's kind of the idea here. You have a lot of them who are protecting you, working together as an entity. Realize bacteria have no consciousness, no mind, none of that stuff. We have that, they don't. Yet they're able to form these interesting colonies out of nothing but sharing very fundamental and known compounds to each other. These compounds signal them to do one thing versus another. That's an interesting approach, right? So in security systems, we can have something like that happen often. And this is the idea that I talked about earlier with mud. You can put together mud, you can put together procmail, and now you have a decent filtering system for email. You can put together other stuff like I put together Task Warrior, so I can schedule tasks right from my email client by pressing M and stuff like that. That's what the idea of biofilms is. And the interesting thing here is that biofilms and these kind of things, they're producing what I like to call intelligent response, because before we know bacteria were not intelligent, but now they have a sort of a protection. It's like you're walking with 10 of your buddies and you have a sort of protection by being around them. And kind of the same here actually. They have protection just by being around their buddies and things like that. And here is actually one of my qualms with a lot of software. Softwares will often put things together, they have new and neat features, and they take them, and then they take out some of the old stuff. Because if you advertise the old stuff that got you breached, you're probably not going to run very well in business. Pardon that. And so, life systems have an incredible advantage over this. I worked in a lab before where, so everyone here, I hope at least to some extent knows what DNA is, right? So it's like a long thing that does other things, That your DNA is like your core molecule for life. So DNA contains everything. Ever since evolution started, it contains everything from the first get-go till now, which is a few million years of evolution that happened throughout that time. DNA contains every single change that accumulated, even us. We contain a lot of things that even happened that are, we share most of our stuff with other related species. Turns out about 7 million years ago, there used to be something called the theta defensin, which I showed here. It's a protein, by the way. Theta defensin used to protect old world monkeys. This is before our ancestors, direct ancestors, chimpanzees and orangutans formed. These guys had a protein that could protect them from HIV. This is still present in our DNA, but it's not activated, of course. My point I'm trying to make here is security systems presently often miss out things that they realize afterwards were important. Your patches delete code, your patches insert things that may or may not be, you want to avoid redundancy, right? Obviously your software needs to be slim and nice because it works that way. But that may not be an advantage to it. And over this, biological systems have an incredible advantage because they can save almost all of these things that happen. The lab I worked in earlier on, they revived theta defensin, a 7 million years old protein that's sleeping. They revived it, and it had incredible amount of success treating HIV. Now they're working on a drug that actually, it's a very commonly found drug actually, aminoglycosides. Don't worry if you're not familiar with that. If you are, then talk to me after the conference. This very common antibiotic is found outside. You take that, you apply, you give it to some patient, and they start to, well, we're not at patient's level yet, but this is just at the level of samples and stuff. They had protection for HIV for 3 or 4 days. This is 3 or 4 days continuous attack by HIV virus to get in. No, it's like slapping the little thing away. Nope, you can't come in. This is, I argue that this is actually one of the advantages. This redundancy and this incredible amount of complexity that life systems possess is an advantage over some of the security systems, which might or might not we want to keep implemented. I'll talk about a strategy later on where I think, how about something like torrent trackers, right? So these trackers stay up most of the time and they track, who's in, who's out, that kind of general kind of stuff. Can you keep your old versions of the software very slimmed down, just a module you removed as a tracker? So if you detect an attack like that you previously tackled, can this tracker take care of it in real time? Or can this tracker at least file an alert? That's the idea. As long as you can be alerted, you might be able to do something about it. Computer systems also have a major problem, and that's limited adaptability. If you take a software, in Linux, softwares generally edit the .rc files and stuff like that. I'm talking about you only have 3 or 4 files you can edit. In there, you have a limited amount of variables you can edit, because obviously the programmer doesn't want you to edit everything, right? You'll break something. You want to edit the things that seem interesting to you. In biological systems, that's not always true. In life systems, that thing over there, it looks like a clover leaf. It's an adapter molecule that's found in all of us, by the way. The adapter molecule can go on. This thing can do ridiculously impossible tasks that would be not known otherwise. In humans, there was a case study. This guy was sleeping. There was a tornado. He's sleeping, you know, all this and napping nicely. The tornado sweeps the entire house, his roof. He flies, I think, 100 feet from the tornado. It's fallen. He wakes up. He's just fine. Not even a single broken bone. The point I'm trying to make here is that the life systems using these adaptive molecules can produce responses. In life systems, it's called the SOS response. That kind of SOS is bad, right? So that's help me out, stuff kind of stuff. These SOS responses make it so that you can do, I mean, it releases adrenaline, and adrenaline can do incredible tasks. I mean, I'm not going to go into that into detail, but adrenaline is a thing that we are one of the only species who have it, and it's for good reasons. Adrenaline makes us from a normal to a superhuman. So I hope most people here are familiar with Turing completeness and the notion of what Turing complete is. If you're not, Turing completeness is a language that can give rise to more languages. Roughly, that's one way to put it. Turing completeness is basically, if you know C, you can create programs out of it. In the most basic terms, a Turing complete language gives me the ability to create other things out of it that were not originally part of constructing this language. So C has a certain list of words you use. Those are system reserved. I created something out of it that was not that. Hello World was not a part of C. I created that. That gives me the ability to create. That's Turing completeness. Viruses, now I'm talking about software stuff, by the way. Viruses are nothing more than Turing completeness codes that somehow we think, I mean, we're seeing them now, and when I talk about Stuxnet, this will become very clear. We're seeing them behave just like life systems, if not better. The examples I just gave, the adapter molecule, the theta defensive, I will try to come back to them if we have enough time, revisit them in the context of life systems. Complex viruses, and I'm talking about the three big ones that were just revealed not too long ago, Stuxnet, DuQ, and Flame. I have read almost too much about them because they were amazing, just amazing pieces of software. Probably some of the most advanced software, and the people who wrote them were genius mathematicians, or I don't know who they were. No one knows, but anyway. These complex viruses create sublocal. Local is if I have a computer and this computer and this computer, they're part of a network. Okay, that's cool. But I can also create a peer-to-peer network from this network to another network here. These create these sublocal networks that initially were impossible to do. You know, this sounds just like out of a sci-fi movie, right? You have a nuclear power plant and you blow it up and bad stuff happens. This is like good guys fighting against the bad guys. This is sounds like right out of a movie, but this is almost exactly what Stuxnet did, and I'll talk about that in much detail. Basically, viruses now are known to have almost all the features that we know exist in life systems. They can replicate, mentioned here. They have self-assembly, meaning they are downloaded in parts, right? So often, a lot of times, viruses download their payload after the fact. They have self-assembly because they can function as a whole after they download the second part. The first part knows how the second part is going to dock into it and function properly as a full virus. Afterwards, they can also, the most important thing, they can sense and respond. Viruses have this thing. If you try to, especially with Stuxnet, if you try to delete it, it'll lock up your system. In the machines that were used by the Iranian engineers to control the Siemens control systems, the devices, if you try to delete some of the parts of it out, or if you try to delete Stuxnet modules or drivers, it will lock up your computer. And it sounds nothing like it sounds just like, oh, my computer got broken or something. I'll go fix it. But they don't realize this is actually a defense by the virus. If you reset it, Stuxnet restores itself from a local command and control server. I keep mentioning Stuxnet. Don't worry, I'll get to it. Oh, right here, actually. Oh, there we go. So, Stuxnet, in my opinion, by far one of the most brilliant pieces of code written ever. This figure explains, I'm going to refer to this figure. Generally, I like to use PowerPoints as guidelines when I talk, because I get to see you guys and your beautiful faces. But this time, I think I'll look back and see. Stuxnet starts from control and command server. We have the Siemens report, or sorry, the Stuxnet report by Semantics mentions the two of the most prominent ones where they got most hits on control and command servers were actually in Iran and Israel. Realistically speaking, US and Israel probably, one of them made it because they're the only ones who have the capability to make it. No one else can because this is far too complex. By the way, there was a torrent not too long ago. I probably should have downloaded it, but I was younger, I was stupid. The torrent had the code for Stuxnet. I got it down. It's beautiful. I didn't look through all of it. Just some of the stuff. Kind of neat stuff. I think when HB Gary got pwned, they got the stuff from them and uploaded it. And I'm like, well, that's cool. You know, there's a torrent here. I can download it. So there's an infection from the control and command server into one target site. In case of Stuxnet, there was more stuff involved. Someone actually plugged in a USB. This USB contained a, and this is the coolest part of all three of these sister worms, USB contained a driver that was signed up by Microsoft. No one knows how the hell they got a driver signed. It was actually signed by Realtek and I think by Microsoft too. The vulnerability was a printer spool vulnerability. That printers are bad. Printers are totally evil. Oatmeal wrote a comic on how printers are evil because printers are generally our most insecure things. No one gives a about updating, you know, printer drivers, but well, someone can exploit them. That's another way you can pwn someone by printer stuff if they don't have updated. We got a new printer. I was surprised. This printer has FTP running on it locally, so you can email or upload files to be printed on that. I'm like, this is too much for a printer. Only thing this thing should do is print my documents and nothing more than that. We don't want 20 other features. So, okay, infection happens, the computer is happy, the virus is happy, not the computer. The virus is all happy, like, the virus now goes and searches for other mates that are connected. Related computers that are nearby in its vicinity, it'll go spread to them. Once it spreads, all of them have, I think it was 11:59 actually, at night, when these viruses go and check for an update script. They run an update script if the command and control servers are nearby, or if they reach the command and control servers, they'll update themselves. This is something you can absolutely prevent through extreme detection. I guess the Iranians didn't read that book, so you guys should. Obviously, after they got those viruses get hold and take control over what's going on, after the control happens, then they go and seek and destroy. Stuxnet worked beautifully, and this is actually something I'm almost certain that designers of this took some inspiration from life sciences, because Stuxnet worked by feeding false information. It basically read what the valves and those rotating chambers were feeding. A few days later on, it basically fed the same information, but caused the cylinders to rotate faster. The cylinders kept on rotating and rotating, but the operator only sees the fake data that Stuxnet generated out of the blue. You don't know what's going on with your machines. No one's going to go in and check that. But they found over and over again the cylinders were not working. They kept on breaking. Why is that? Is the rotation wrong? No, my data tells me that my rotation of cylinders is absolutely fine. They didn't know that Stuxnet were doing this ingenious task of, and life systems do this, by the way. Viruses, this is animal viruses, by the way. They go into your cell, they infect it, they replicate. The cell doesn't know why it's replicating the virus to make more of it, right? The virus wants more buddies. It's lonely inside of a cell, and then it goes into the cell and makes more of itself. It's like, well, let me make more of my buddies. And in the process, the cell actually will do this, and it keep doing this. The problem is, the cell doesn't realize, just like the operator didn't realize the Stuxnet was feeding that info. Moving along. Okay, so there's story time, right? So everyone loves story time. I like story time. So once upon a time, yes, how all stories start. There was a cute virus that was lacking food. It found food as in terms of a bacteria. You see this guy? That's bacteria. That's how they look, by the way. They look really cool. Neat. They have a tail. This is what's called a T4. Right out of this tail, as much pressure as your tire exploding generates, that's how much pressure this thing's gonna put and inject its DNA. Nothing in the world that is living can tolerate that much pressure at the level of a cell. It just goes right in, and you can't stop this thing. You can stop its attachment maybe, but you can't stop once it's attached. It's gonna dig its toes in. Those are spikes, toes, whatever you want to call them, and then bam, it injects itself inside. And so now the cell's inside, but it feels lonely. It's happy, but it's just there by itself. You know, it doesn't have buddies in there. This is how you would feel once your systems have been breached, but you don't know. The viruses, the worms, whatever backdoors injected are present, and now is where the good stuff is going to start. This virus is going to go and inject itself once more into the machinery of the cell and make more of itself. Because you know it wants buddies. No one wants to be by themselves, right? This guy wants buddies, and in the process of making new friends, this guy is going to start destroying stuff. The same way in how security systems, once a virus gets in, it's going to download more payload, you know, more of his buddies, and actually implement the core modules. Stuxnet had a core module that that actually would start off by resetting your computer. That's how they initially found Stuxnet. The computer would go in an infinite reset loop. They thought it was a common problem. Symantec had some honeypots that Stuxnet accidentally went to, and that's where the journey started to find the Stuxnet. So here's more of story time. That virus makes more mates. It makes those mates. The cell is broken. It leaves, and basically the cell's dead. They keep repeating this process. It makes more and more of itself. Basically, same way Stuxnet keeps on repeating locally to local networks, and viruses repeat themselves locally to local networks. Keep doing more and more of that, you cause more and more harm. Similarly, the operator or the cell in a life science model, they don't know what they're doing and why they're doing it. They just know they're doing something. They're replicating, but they're not replicating themselves. They're replicating the virus and making more of that. Bad stuff happened. Again, back to Stuxnet because I love this thing. They said, Symantec I think said that this virus reset Iran's nuclear program, which by the way is total shit. You read how they implemented some of that stuff and you read some of the people who were involved in it. Basically, a lot of the information that they used to implement a lot of their work in the nuclear power plants was publicly available. They didn't do something written out. A lot of those papers written up in 1970s and 80s here by scientists. They implemented that stuff. It set their nuclear program back by 2 to 3 years, but just by the amount of cylinders and money. Because cylinders cost money, Anything you add the word nuclear on top costs already $5,000. And then then that thing actually has real function, that costs another $5,000. And then you replace it, that costs maybe 5 more. So Iran obviously shut itself off. No one knows why. They just this is right after the impact, by the way. Only the IAEA, in the International Atomic Energy Association, they're the only ones who actually know what's going on because they were there visiting. They're not allowed to talk because they made a pact with if they can even come into Iran and talk about their nuclear stuff. They can't talk about it outside. So Iran just shuts their nuclear facilities. It comes as a shock to the world when Symantec reveals what the hell's actually going on. And they partnered up with someone, this German guy, I forget his name now, a brilliant fellow. This guy had weird degrees. He had knowledge of some weird stuff. He actually had a really good expertise in those Siemens devices. That's why he got recruited to work on this project. And that resulted in them finding. He told me, I actually corresponded with him through email. He told me that through when this was going, I followed this very, very closely when it was happening. He told me he was working 80 hours a week and he didn't feel like he wanted to go sleep. He would come in because he was so passionate about what he was doing. Because he realized that this is something novel that's never happened before. He said, he told me this is his code. He's like, man, I come into work, I go back home, I sleep, I come back to work. This is my life for 5 months. And he decoded everything that was happening in Stuxnet. He gave the largest chunk of information on it. Real quick, Stuxnet has modules, as we mentioned. Life science systems also have modules. Viruses have a module that maintains their own integrity. They have a module that makes their friends. They have a module that kills the host after they make their friends. It's like, you go to someone's house, like they invite you for dinner. You go there, and then you call your buddies, hey, there's free food, come by. And then you basically, all 10 of your buddies eat, and all 10 of your buddies actually gang on this poor fellow and kill him. And then the house is yours, all the food is yours. That's how viruses work, more or less. And so the Stuxnet modules work in a similar way. There was a management module, there was a loading module, there was an unloading module, there was an updating module. You can go on and on. There's 27 total modules, I think, in Stuxnet. Last time I read the thing, maybe there's more. Again, get this book too. So Stuxnet and DQ, two of the sister rooms that came out, you realize they were actually integrated in a much larger whole as itself. Flame, as I understand, actually contained a whole freaking scripting engine based on Lua. It was really stripped down. This thing was left so that the attacker could actually modify and create new worms right on the spot on that server that is infected, the local control and command server, and push them out. It's like you pushing your code to GitHub. You push and you just type and push whatever and does that. Basically, that was the idea, that you create local repositories of these viral infections there. Similarly, in life systems, sometimes viruses do nasty, nasty things. The Salmonella virus actually has something very similar to this. I feel like, and this is maybe my own personal bias, I feel like a lot of these creators, they drew inspiration from biological systems. Because it's impossible, all this stuff that I'm presenting is something that's very commonly known to someone who works in life sciences. And how did they make something so eerily similar to what's found in natural systems? Maybe they took some to design some of these best viruses, they took inspiration from those things. And I hope you guys do too, in designing the future security system, inspiration from these particular forms or these particular biological systems. Okay, and here is probably the wrecking ball part of this track. There's no Nicolas Cage here yet. These pictures look complex, but don't worry about the complexity. I made them so that you guys probably can't read them. That's for a purpose. The point of these pictures is to illustrate numbers. And we win by numbers. Companies cannot make software that they advertise, look, our software is shitty, but we have so much of it that you're protected. That won't sell. Our body works that way. We have, at any given time, 75% of our blood contains these thugs called NK cells. They're like your local thugs that will rob you of everything you have. They protect us from something that's not us. So there's self and there's non-self. In the immune system, it's very clear. Immune system is our major integrator. You can see, just count the numbers. There's a whole bunch of stuff here. Each of these can then go on to make 10 to the 8 number of themselves. 10 to the 8 is a huge number. They keep making them. These are modules of life system. Just so I described, Stuxnet has management modules, it has loading, deloading modules. Immune system has these guys, which will pretty much kill everything, actually even including you. That's the basis, no, that's the basis of autoimmune disease, where your own, the problem is you have so much of this stuff in you at all times that if they decide to attack you, you're dead. I mean, there's no way saving you. That's called septic shock, happens sometimes. If you're a good doctor, you can save the person. If you're bad, they die. Generally they die, even if you're a good doctor, because the intensity is too high of these things. Unfortunately, no more pictures. I just text stuff because we had pictures, pretty pictures and stuff, but now we'll talk about some more material. Quality versus quantity. You sell stuff if you have quality, if you have pretty pictures. I think most of it depends on sales and how well you can pitch your product. More importantly, I think a lot of it depends on, can you make pretty documents where I stole the pictures from throughout for this presentation. If you make them, you sell your stuff very well. Our body doesn't do that. We work in a very sloppy system, but we have 10 to the 20 of them, so we're good. You know, how much of virus can enter your body, right? No matter how much it enters, you always have more of us. And you have so many of them that one of those will actually act on killing you. You're always going to have that one guy. You know, you have the one guy in class who asks them questions, right? There's always that one guy who will kill any given virus at any time, even HIV. And once they find that guy, basically, that guy is like your main fighter. I'm almost done, by the way, don't worry. This is a really cool picture, actually. A beautiful diagram I stole again. Don't worry about the names and stuff. Just look at the locations. These are all your module centers. These are the command and control servers in the human body that do all the neat stuff. Basically, these guys have one function: produce a lot of the stuff that kills other stuff. That's it. They don't do IDS. They don't do any of that detection. You know how detection works in us? Chemical imbalance. You maintain a very proper balance in the body. If the balance is imbalanced, well, we need to do something. These guys all activate and produce a crap lot of stuff that actually harms you. That's why when you're sick, you actually start to feel, when you recover, it takes a while to recover, not just one day. It's because your own tissues and stuff got damaged from it. So NK cells, one of the things I was talking about earlier on, these guys attack in numbers. It's like, you're walking down the street, you're wearing a golden chain, a golden watch, everything like a golden shirt, that's like just asking to get robbed. But you're walking down a shady hall and alleyway, you come by and you see someone, and then those guys, you're walking with your bunch of buddies, right? You think no one's gonna attack you, but you're wrong. You get a whole bunch of people attack you. One of your buddies runs back to your boss, because you're the thugs, you have a gang, or however that shit works. You go back to your boss comes back and says, you know what, you ran away, I'm gonna send like 50 of my people. That one guy who came by knows, oh hey, look, that person had a gun, that person had a baseball bat, and that person had these other things. And so you basically come back with your buddies, everyone has a machine gun or something now, and you kill them all, and you win. That's how generally body systems work out, for the most part. So we have a lot of tonnage advantages that give us, make us who we are. And I hope that, I'm running a little short on time actually, and I'm going to try to wrap up quick here. I hope that part of what I try to get across to you guys is a lot of these aspirations from biological systems and life sciences, how these things work. The biggest thing that we have going for us is that life has been around for 2.5 billion years. That's a long time. Security systems have not been around for that long, which is good, because then they will be just as good. A lot of us probably would have jobs because the machines are in everything. We have advantages because of random mutations that occur in us. These mutations, so to think of it this way, the worst thing you can think of, AIDS, right? So one of the worst things you can think of. AIDS, 1% of population will never get AIDS, no matter what happens. But you can't infect everyone with AIDS and have 1% live and like, oh, well, that's the 1%, and you'll kill everyone else. But at any given time, 1% of them have it. So the introduction of random logic and fuzziness, can you incorporate those things in security systems to make it so that those guys, there are some modules that don't work in your traditional manner. They don't detect the common rules you follow. They detect something else. That goes back to the idea kind of the trackers, right? Each tracker detects or appears and so on and so forth. Can you make them happen so that they work differently in a sense that can confer advantage? How this works, I leave up to you guys because I'm not a security person anymore. I study computational biology. So that's your challenge to figure it out. My challenge here is to present to you guys what can I get across in whatever 45, 50 minutes that was allocated to make sure that do you realize this how much advantages live systems have just by numbers. So writing software that's the most brilliant code may not be the best approach always. Sometimes just putting together a lot of shitty tools might give you a humongous functional advantage over some of these tools. And I think I will wrap up by saying that thank you for staying awake, actually. I'm surprised. Thank you very much. Now maybe I have 2-3 more minutes. I'm going to open up the forum for questions. Anything?
Yeah. Yep.
No? No questions? We're cool? All right, people. That was lovely. Thank you.